Welcome to Unlock Your Soul with yours truly, Anthony Your Soul. Today I have an amazing special guest all the way from Canada who's doing such great things. She is only just, I won't even tell you her age. I want you guys to hear from her after you understand that, everything that she does is, she's so passionate about what she does. And her age betrays her a lot because she should be like chilling, hanging out at the park, enjoying the movies with her friends, but she's doing such phenomenal, mind-blowing global issues. I am talking about the one and only Vedanshi Vala, all the way from Canada. Welcome to Unlock Your Soul.
Wow, thank you. That was a very hype introduction.
Thanks so much for coming through. But before we talk about what you do, I was looking at some of your older photos and I feel so bad that we're not on video today, but you cut your hair. Why did you cut your hair? I'm sure because you have such long hair. I really have long hair, so I feel bad when people cut their hair.
Well, it was kind of a funny and a spontaneous decision. I was going to this conference and I was going to be there for a week.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was going to be in meetings all day. And so I was like, if I need to look good all the time, maintaining long hair is harder. And so if I cut it short, it takes less time to wash it, less to maintain it. So that was literally the reason I cut it short.
But I also feel like I'm not trying to judge you, but I feel like from you cutting your hair, it comes off like you just want to get things done.
Yeah.
Like you're very intentional about everything that you do. Before we get into Bolt Safety Society, let's first get into who is Vedanshi. Why are you so passionate about issues that people around your age would probably, to be honest, not really care about?
I think that I come from a background where I've been very fortunate to go through life feeling pretty safe. But I've heard stories from close relatives or friends where they've experienced some really, really bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think if I have the knowledge and resources and capacity, then it's a responsibility to make sure that I'm using it to help make the world a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. So talk to us now about Bolt Safety Society and also how old you are.
Yeah.
And so that people can understand when I meant that, your age betrays you. You should be chilling out in the park with your friends, Akina Arpan and Zian, just, living life. So I want to know, what is Bolt Safety Society and how do you come into this whole amazing non-profit organization?
Yeah, so I'll take you back to when I was in grade 10. I currently just finished fourth year university. And when I was in grade 10, there was this competition called the Anu and Naveen Jain Women's Safety X Prize. It was a global challenge to leverage technology to build a solution to women's safety. So at the time, I led a team into that competition. We got kicked out of it like first round. We were against like professional companies, But I think that really sparked our passion for using technology to make the community better. But as like the deeper I got into it, the more I realized that safety is a systemic issue. There's not like here's a panic button and now safety is solved, right? Like we need to make sure that people don't become perpetrators. People are being survivor centric, not blaming the victims or the survivors. So there's a whole host of systems to dismantle. And so that's where the redirection into the nonprofit world started. We incorporated as Bolt Safety Society because we believe that, the lack of safety is a humanitarian crisis and it needs to be responded to at the speed of lightning, which is why the Bolt.
Bolt,
Yeah. And so I co-founded the organization with an amazing team. And we've started with the launch of our digital platform. It's I'd say like a library of all these resources and systems of support for survivors and their allies. And then from there, we also branched into community programming. But really at the core of our work is that digital platform piece.
Yeah. So then now you're in Nairobi. Then it was quite sort of a interesting chance meeting. Tell us about how you ended up in Nairobi.
Yeah, so I was at the Commission on the Status of Women's 67th session at the United Nations in New York, and I met with...
But first, before you continue, I like how you mentioned some of these things. It's like I was just at the washroom. It's like it's so normal to you, like being in New York at the UN. It's like, oh, guys, I was just parking my car, But it's a very African way, and a passive-aggressive way of telling you that you are phenomenal.
Thank you.
So let's continue. You're at the UN.
Right. So I'm at the UN, and so there's all these different sessions where people from different countries and organizations present.
Yeah.
So one of the high-level sessions that I was in was held by, I believe, the African Union, and Kenyan MP, Honorable WaMuchomba, was one of the presenters.
Yeah.
And so at that event, they were asking questions to the audience. So I raised my hand. I said something, and then we connected after the event because she wanted to learn more about our work. We met up for coffee, told her what we do at Bolt in Canada, and she was interested in bringing that work to Kenya. And really, we just sat down, and I actually have like handwritten notes of the whole system that she explained to me here, of her concerns around violence locally and the ways in which our interventions here can be used to complement the work already happening on the ground and potentially break those systems so that, you know, violence is curbed.
Yeah. And so now you're in Kenya. I mean, tell us about your experience so far, what you've been able to see in terms of like the ecosystem, which I feel lacks a lot in terms of any survivor or victim of domestic violence really doesn't have a place to run to in terms of the lack of knowledge or expertise from policing, sort of, you know, agencies, and just even from a community perspective, there's really no place for them to run. So where have you been going to, and what have you sort of witnessed so far?
Right. So our objective, like you said it rightfully, like we're to try to understand the whole ecosystem, right? So there's the aspect of reporting the crime once it's happened. And so the police here have a gender desk. The gender desk is essentially this separate building from the police station where anyone can go 24/7 operational, go in and report their experience. The issue is that let's say that someone's experiencing domestic abuse at home, and then they go to report the crime at the police station, say it's nighttime, and their officers aren't able to process the case right away and make an action on accosting the perpetrator. That person now has to go back home until the police are able to take action. And so in that time frame, that person's life is at risk because now their perpetrator may find out that they filed a report, and so they're putting their life in risk, even making that report and then having to go back. So having intermediate safe spaces is incredibly needed. And that's the same thing that the police officers there told us as well. Then there's the children's office that we also visited in Githunguri, and they deal with any matters pertaining to children. Like there's a lot of cases of neglect and abuse. Our focus was specifically on instances of domestic violence, sexual violence, and they unfortunately get a lot of children as well that experience that.
It's sad.
And it's incredibly difficult. What we found there, and it sort of echoed throughout that ecosystem, was that the social workers, the police officers, they're so incredibly passionate. They're so incredibly knowledgeable about dealing with survivors of violence and making sure they get the right help. What's lacking is the resources, right? So if someone comes in, they have an obligation to make sure they're helped. But how many people can they help when they're not enough safe space infrastructures to pass them along to?
I can only imagine how burnt out they are.
Absolutely. Burnout is real.
It's ridiculous, and the thing is that we don't. One of the things, did you find any challenge in terms of like documentation? In terms of, for example, their experiences not really being documented, so that we can actually have action being done by the likes of the MP WaMuchomba. What are some of the challenges you feel that they face, and how do you feel we can sort of fill in those gaps? Even before we talk about like, you know, crazy funding or like support from government, what are some of the low-hanging fruits you feel we can be able to sort of sort out?
Well, the first thing is, even making the report, the person needs to know what they're going through. So, you know, is this an abusive relationship? Is this not a safe situation for me? Is help out there available? Will I be believed? Are my experiences valid? And so these sort of questions, I think we're experiencing challenges with any part of the world. Like we see this in Canada, like because of victim blaming narratives, which is the reason that stigma needs to be removed around talking about these things. And the blame needs to be, and the onus needs to be put back on the perpetrators. So really at the low-hanging fruit level is just about changing the mindset and the narrative around sexual violence and making it survivor-centric. Because the moment we do that, why would someone be afraid to go report their crime if they know they're going to be heard or they're going to be believed? And so that's the first thing that needs to change. In terms of the other reporting is, family members or friends deterring the survivor from reporting it, trying to keep it internal.
I mean, that for me is always the biggest issue. You run to those who you feel should, should really hold your hand and like tell you, let's go to the police station now, let's go, let's sue this guy, let's sue this lady or whatever. And the ones who tell you, no, just, these things, you don't talk about these things. I mean, was it, I know it happens a lot all over the world, but was it shocking for you to experience that, victims telling you that I didn't go because my family said, nope, you're not going to do it?
Absolutely. We were at Wings for Hope Foundation. They're an organization that works with teenage mothers. And I had a sit-down chat with one of them, and she was just telling me about how she didn't actually get pregnant through an assault, which she's a minor, so how much could that really have been consensual? But she was telling me that her mother was the abuser, and that when she her mother beat her, and when she told her mom about the pregnancy, she didn't take it well. And so she's at the shelter now, right?
Wow.
But it's sort of when they open up and they tell people that are supposed to be looking out for them and trusting, and they don't get that support, that's a huge issue. The other thing is, yes, it was incredibly difficult to see, because in Canada, I think we still have that baseline infrastructure in place to support. Yes, there's a lot that can be done better, but at the end of the day, there's capacity in our shelters, there's capacity in our police stations. There's a lot of training provided to change that mindset around talking about these things and being survivor-centric. But here, on the other hand, we were actually, this happened yesterday, we were going on a safari to Masai Mara, and when our driver picked us up, there were actually 2 girls in the car already that he'd picked up on the streets. They'd just been raped.
Wow.
So one of the girls didn't have clothes on her, and so the driver had given her a blanket, and the other one, when she got out of the car, I didn't really get to interact with them because I didn't know until they got out of the car what had happened. One of the girls, her dress strap had been torn off, so it was, from the looks of it, quite a violent assault as well. And so there's good Samaritans out there, like that driver, who picked them up and gave them a blanket, restored some of that dignity, and made sure they were dropped off to their ride so they could go to a police station and take the next steps. But we need more people that are more safe people. And just thinking, right, okay, in Canada, I could probably walk down the street and I'd probably be fine. But here I can't do that. It's incredibly dangerous, especially for women. It happens to men as well, but especially for women. And so, yes, it was shocking just walking into this and just seeing this happen. And I think at a point when these things are happening in such great frequency, people tend to get desensitized to them as well. And I think we can, no matter how many cases there are, no matter how, we cannot let those numbers desensitize us. We need to keep up the hope. We need to keep making that change happen.
It's interesting. I've never viewed it that way, but I mean, as you say, you always live it and learn. But now the more I think about it, it's sort of an apathy of sorts come about, we heard about this, and like I told you before, our fetishization with numbers. 50% of Kenyan women have all, experienced sexual violence in one way or another. And then, I mean, it's such a huge number, but we act like it's okay. So moving on, okay, I hope I'm not the next victim, or I hope my daughter isn't one of it. I'll make sure that I'll safeguard her, whatever. But then we forget that these are actual people we're talking about.
People,
these are
families.
Human beings, these are families. The effect is way bigger than just a number. How does it make you feel as a 22-year-old, seeing adults, seeing the community, sometimes one either not having solutions or not doing enough to safeguard women, children, and men in society?
I think when I hear about the stories and people's experiences, it makes my blood boil. But when I recognize the current situation around the lack of resources or the lack of enough being done, that makes me feel hopeless. And I think as a young person, that's the last thing we want to feel, right? Because I think adults like to say that, you're our hope and whatever. But it makes me feel hopeless to the point that it's whatever I'm doing, is that even going to make a dent? And so I think in terms of the mindset, I think a lot of people might feel that way as well. But we can do small things. If you hear from a survivor, believe them, be their ally, be supportive, don't judge them, don't blame them. And if even one person chooses to be a safe person, then that's one less unsafe person out there. So I think there are small things we can do in the face of something that's deeply disheartening.
We can be more intentional. Let's talk about the safe spaces and the safe hubs that we, with the likes of you and the likes of MP WaMuchomba are really trying to be able to bridge that gap in terms of lack of information, lack of resources, lack of agency, to be able to make it possible for survivors of violence to really find a new home. When we talk about a safe space or a safe hub that has access point for products, what are we talking about? Paint a picture of what that looks like. What does it mean to have a safe space?
A safe space for this concept specifically is, so let's say someone has experienced violence at home, or if they're walking down the street and they think someone's following them, where do they go immediately, right? Let's say they're not close to a police station. they just see the sign for a safe hub, right? And that branding is recognized, and they know they can go in there and they're going to be okay, right? So when they get inside, having trained team members that have the capacity to deal with anyone that's experienced trauma, and so just tying in and collaborating with the counselors and mental health professionals in Kenya, because these people already exist. It's all about bringing them into one place, right? And then from there, making referrals as required based on the nature of the situation to police to file a report, perhaps sending accompaniment, so they don't have to do that alone. Making sure that they have menstrual products, but not just that. If they've been violated, then if they need clothing, blankets, restoring that dignity for that person, ensuring that they know that they can go to a hospital and have a sexual assault examination performed, and what that process entails. There's so much mystery around these systems. It's like people, I think, are just expected to know what to do if they've experienced assault, but in reality, that information is not widely shared. And so having that center be a space where they can access that information, learning more about sexual and reproductive health, educational material on those topics, as well as like actual resources that they can take back with them. There's that one, I think, response aspect to it. There's also like long-term thinking about why are these things still happening? Why are victims or survivors unable to escape abusive relationships? And a lot of that comes from economic dependence on their perpetrator. So ensuring that they have the space to be able to apply for jobs or upskill or get second chance education. And so that Safe Hub also serves as a center for empowerment for that aspect, so that they may be able to stand on their own feet and break away from that eventually. And so it's less about being like, okay, here's $10,000, go start a new life. But no, here is a safe space immediately. Here are some skills you can take back with you, and we will work with you to make sure that you can go back. Because the whole idea is to make sure people are empowered to go back and live life to the fullest.
Do you feel like resources like safe spaces need to be sort of enshrined in the constitution? Like we need to have more policy makers, more policy lawmakers to really advocate for these safe spaces. For example, if we talk about like, let's say a community of like 1,000 people, we should have like a police station, sort of caters for that community, that population. Should this be also something that we sort of advocate for? And someone might argue and say that no, we also need to have a lot of education that people can end the violence, people can stop assaulting or whatever, but we also have to deal with those who are going through it. So I don't want to deal with not that it's not important to me, but I don't want to deal with what should people do to stop the violence. I really believe that we need to deal with the issue that is at hand, which is people are suffering and struggling because of violence, of domestic violence. Do you feel that it needs to be enshrined in constitution, that this needs to be normal, that we have safe spaces for people to feel like I can walk away from a really terrible family setup and begin my life? Because a lot of them stay. And when you talk to women or to men who've been violated, they'll say things like, I have kids. Oh, I do want to go. Where should I go to next? What are people going to say about me? My own parents will tell me to go back. So let's make this more permanent so that it doesn't deal with the issue at hand and we move on as we go along. But how do we, or do you think we need to have more permanent sort of safe spaces and really enshrined in the constitution as far as the issue is concerned?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Because safety is a fundamental human right. It's not about politics. And I think a lot of times when politicians are trying to get into office, they tend to use these issues as for vote bank, but that's not how it should be. I think that the way that we have police stations, the way that we have hospitals, the way that we have shopping centers, safety should not be something that people need to question. Is the next government going to provide that? We shouldn't
have to be fighting, advocate. This should be common sense.
Exactly. Common sense isn't very common, right?
Yeah, it's not always common.
Exactly. And so I definitely do think that there needs to be government level support. And one of the reasons for that not only is the permanency of the programming, actually two reasons. One is that perpetrators know the government does not condone violence. That is huge. That makes a statement. The other reason is that the level of resources needed to triangulate the response from the grassroots level all the way up to the high courts, right, when it comes to all these crimes. And then after the cases are done, the socio-psychological support provided to the survivors. So coordinating all of that, you can't be putting the burden on NGOs that are volunteering their time to do this, right? So it needs to be
Yeah.
a government responsibility. They have an obligation to their people.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Again, you're a brilliant mind. The idea that issues like safety is the preserve of NGOs, non-profit organizations, the preserve of other people who are passionate about human beings, whilst government's core mandate is to take care of its own human beings.
Exactly.
Period. There really shouldn't be a question around it. So this leads me to really ask you why. Why, Vedanshi? Why do you do? I mean, and I'm not trying to mean that young people shouldn't care about issues that affect them,
Yeah.
shouldn't have a nerve or steel balls or whatever. But why is there such a young kid like yourself, with a lot of respect when I call you kid, sees it upon themselves that this is important for you? Why?
I think it goes back to what I was saying about if I have the knowledge and capacity to make a difference, then I absolutely should. I consider it a responsibility.
Yeah.
I think a part of it comes from my heritage as well. I'm from India originally. I live in Canada right now, but my ancestry is rooted in Indian royalty, and so when I look at my ancestors, they've really stepped up to help their people when required, made personal sacrifices to make sure that they're taken care of, and so in a modern context, in terms of my own identity, when I think about what does having this, it's called Rajput background mean in 2022, like why does anyone care about that? And for me, it goes back to like my role in this world is to give back, and so at the core of it, I think that is the reason I do what I do, and I come from enough privilege to be able to do this work, not paying myself anything, because I know my parents are able to take care of me, my family's got my back, but I know there's a lot of people out there that want to help, but just given the lack of resources, they can't. And so I'm glad to be in a position where I can give back.
And for people like yourself and me who are able, whether even if it's not even from a money perspective, but from even like a time perspective, amplifying the voices of people like yourself or the voices of those who are really trying to do the most to be able to uplift others. What do you think we can do in our own personal spaces? And this is with regard to your organizations. Where do we find you? Can we look for a local charter? Is there an office in Kenya that you've seen, for example, that maybe we can go help out? Maybe it's an organization that you feel like we can spend our time there, and we can give our resources or time. Maybe somebody has an old phone and they feel like, I want to buy a new phone. Maybe take this phone to the resource center so they can be able to have a phone with internet or whatever that can make calls, that can send emails. What do you think we can do in our own personal capacities?
Yeah, I don't think it actually takes a lot of money to make an impact and make a lasting impact on someone's life. There's so many organizations in Kenya that are doing incredible work, and a lot of them we've had the opportunity to sit down and speak with. So one of our partner organizations is, for the menstruator, Zian, we'll probably talk about that. We have Heals for Pads as well. They're co-designing this whole Safe Hubs project with us. We have the WaMuchomba Foundation. They have excellent, vision in mind for where they can take this sort of work in the future. And they've been working on this for like over a decade. And so just going back to the whole thing about like, yes, I'm young and I've only been doing this for a few years, but there's so many people that are doing so much more, and we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And so just remembering that we're never working in isolation, and doing what you can to even go to a shelter and take time to talk with the kids, right? Because yes, there's their moms are there, their caretakers are there, but what about the kids? Like, play with them. What we like to do is just we went into a few of these spaces, and sometimes kids just want to play soccer with you.
Just want to feel loved.
Spread more love. And I think that can go a long way. I think children that are loved grow up to be beautiful adults that love and spread love in the world, right? And like you said, this whole thing boils down to if there was love and respect. Yeah.
Like I said before, people hurt. Nelson Mandela said it best that we are taught to hate.
Yes.
And for people who are taught to hate, it means that we can teach ourselves to love. The fact that you see it very easy to hurt somebody, to maim them, to assault them, it says a lot about who we are as a people, that we are so easy to hurt. And, we easily hurt people. And I know there's a concept that we like to say hurt people, but also we make a choice to hit somebody, to attack them, to assault them, to say words to them that could hurt them, to deprive them of food, to deprive them of their livelihood. So, I mean, we make that choice.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whatever we've gone through. So if we could teach ourselves to love more, love doesn't hurt.
It doesn't.
It doesn't hurt at all. As we conclude, what's the bigger picture for you in terms of what do you think you want to be able to achieve, whether it's from the continent, whether it's in Canada, and even with your amazing partnership with MP WaMuchomba, who, by the way, next time you meet her, tell her I'm such a huge fan because I grew up listening to her, and I loved how she'd speak on radio, and even when I ended up on radio, I always wanted to have sort of like her kind of personality, where when people hear you, they really know you're a straight shooter. I mean, not as a whole like character or whatever. It's just who you are. So I love her for her. Sometimes she's got very strong political stance, and I love her for that.
Yes.
So next time you meet her, please hug her for me.
Will do.
But where do you intend this partnership to go? And also some lovely kind words for her. I mean, I really feel that how you guys met and gelled and this is happening is so phenomenal. I mean, it's one of those unheard of things. So tell me what the future looks like for you.
Absolutely. So for this, I'll answer by saying that the irony of our whole organization is that we shouldn't have to exist because violence should not exist, right? And so...
Hold up. Don't say deep things here and then just slide onto it like, wow. The irony of the situation is that your organization doesn't have to exist.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yes. And so, ideally in the future, we're getting to a point where safety is more normal than violence is. And so perhaps safe hubs can be the conduit to that. But I think more than that, it's about, empowering and inspiring the people on ground in our communities to realize their own power in making a difference.
Yeah.
Because the moment we all step up, no one can stop us.
Yeah.
And so this is the whole full circle story, I think, there's a lot of work to be done. But I think with the support of people like Honorable WaMuchomba, it can be done, and then we need strong leaders like her in office that are going to make safety and human rights a priority. And thinking about it long term. Like, she's never come to us being like, I only need this for the next 2 years. She's thinking long term. How can we make a lifetime of impact? And so we need more people like her. And absolutely, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate her. Appreciate you for sharing stories that need to be shared, and bringing this to people that can make a difference.
Yeah, I've always, to be honest, when I thought about having the podcast, I mean, I was really, they always say that what you sort of put out into the world is what comes back to you. I've had a huge sort of really rethinking and saying that I didn't want to have a podcast where we just do banter. I mean, for me, it's good. I mean, for everybody has their own choice of poison. So for me, I really want a space where we're able to talk about issues that affect us. I mean, issues that we have all the time. And when we have the time, let's talk about these issues. And this is a platform where we can be able to change narratives, we can be able to change mindsets, and we can be able to at least do what we do and what we love to do, and do it honestly and with a lot of intention. So this space is for people like you. So meeting you through Zian, through Arpan was like my speaking to the world coming back to me, because I really want intentional conversations. I want to meet young people like yourself who are doing such great things. I want to amplify those voices, but I also want us to be able to unlock our souls by allowing us to realize, I can actually do something. I have a resource, I have an opportunity where I can change something.
Absolutely.
So thank you once again for being so intentional, for being so cognizant of your background and deciding to not sit on your laurels and just do nothing, but doing so much about it. Thank you so much, Vedanshi Vala. I mean, you are, my God.
Right back at you.
Oh my goodness. You are a well of knowledge and inspiration and all those things. Okay, as we really conclude, again, welcome to Kenya, where Honorable WaMuchomba will tell you, we normally say, finally. And then we realize, I'm not done. And on to the last point. Before I conclude, as a matter of final. The real final. Tell me three, 4 or 5 things that you've learned now about life. In terms of your experience and what you've been able to really grasp as far as life is concerned.
One is that no matter how challenging a situation is, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes you are that light. I don't remember where I heard this, but it's a good way of thinking about it, because sometimes there will be other people that can come and get you out of the hole that you're in, but other times you just need to remember that you have the power within you to do that. So that's one thing I've learned. The other thing is that good people still exist. A lot of times when we're looking at stories or, like the worst of humanity, we're like, oh my God, this world is not going anywhere. It's done. But and then someone just offers to buy you a coffee, and then you remember, no, there's good people out there. And finally, I think that we are stronger together than we are apart. And so any organization that is working in the sexual violence prevention space and the response space and supporting survivors, I raise my hands to you, because everyone on the ground is making great sacrifices to make this work happen, often experiencing, I think, a lot of psychological harm as well as a result of what they're doing. And still they keep going, they keep persevering. And that's the human condition. We keep going, we keep having hope. And that's what I've learned.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. And again, another final. How do you keep yourself sane as you do all of this? How do you ensure that you're also taking care of your mental health as you go through, really difficult trying times for other people? How do you ensure as Vedanshi that that you also get the psychological support that you need to keep going?
Absolutely. Firstly, I think remembering that there's no shame in asking for help. And there have been times where I've reached out for help because I was experiencing some challenges mentally with my own mental health as well. The other thing is having a solid support system. So I have a younger sister and an amazing family, my parents as well, that support me through this work. And, sometimes I'll be, like yesterday, I think I was awake. I took naps, but I was on the grind for pretty much 24 hours or more. And then my sister messaged me being like, "You go to sleep, or I will kick you out of this chat now."
Sleep now.
Sleep now. And so
I don't want to chat with you anymore. Sleep.
Exactly. Go away. Sleep, rest. And so having people like that can hold you accountable to taking care of yourself. And finally, just a few practices I like to do. I like to journal. I like to do yoga from India. Big surprise.
Hello. Wow.
And I like to do boxing. I think it's pretty cathartic.
Oh, I love boxing. I actually do that every tomorrow, which is a Thursday. I'm gonna be boxing. Because that's my thing.
Yes.
It allows you to just sweat it out. And then the thing about boxing is that you really, someone was asking me, why do you you always look at a different person when you're boxing, and I'm like, because when you're in boxing, at that moment you've got nothing else to think about. You literally realize that you sort of really zone out. So boxing is beautiful.
Absolutely.
It took me all these years to realize. And you're at 22. You figured out the secrets before the rest of the world. Thank you so much, Vedanshi. I feel like I don't wanna let you go. I could talk to you all day, but thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing, and I can't wait to see you doing much greater stuff in a much bigger capacity with so much support from around the world.
Thank you.
When you win that Nobel Peace Prize, please don't ignore my WhatsApp. Don't be like, who's this, please?
Oh, please, I have to say that to you.
Oh, no, I would never ignore you. If I can't ignore Zian, I cannot ignore anybody in the world. The most stubborn child that anybody knows, Zian. How can I ignore you? But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You're absolutely amazing. My God, that was just such an amazing conversation with Vedanshi Vala. If you'd like to know more about her, we'll make sure we link all her socials in the description of the show notes. So please make sure you go check her work, and also ask yourself, what have you done for somebody else lately? What have you done for somebody else who really needs your support? Ask yourself that question. Next week, we have another amazing young person who's doing such great stuff. We're going to be hosting Zian Virji and getting to find out why his name means... I don't know, he lies to me. He says Zian means beauty. I don't know if it's true. I think it's a lie. But you know what? We'll find out about his beautiful story from Aga Khan Academy, Mombasa, all the way to also doing great stuff in Canada. That's next week right here on Unlock Your Soul with yours truly, Anthony Your Soul. Keep the conversation going on Facebook, on TikTok, on Twitter, on whatever at Unlock Your Soul Podcast. And also email me at unlockyoursoulpodcast@gmail.com so we can also highlight your stories. Here's a snippet of what's going to be happening next week with Zian Vijji.
Yeah, no, so, thinking back about going back to the story of me almost, going through the experience of dengue fever and almost potentially losing my life, right?
Yeah.
I think now looking back, I'm able to say that this going on this path, and it's crazy when you look back and connect the dots, but it's really put me on this journey of thinking about my purpose and thinking about how is it that I can contribute on scale on this world. And the reason why I went through that experience was I feel like there was seed planted in me, and I have now this responsibility.
It wasn't in vain.
Exactly. And so
subscribe to Unlock Your Soul Podcast on YouTube, and also go check us out on TikTok, on Instagram, and every single place where the world exists. It's time to unlock your soul.